Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. This one, as you all know, to end the month is a Q&A, where myself and Dan will answer your questions to help inspire you and feel more knowledgeable upon the subject of game and level design. Hey everyone, I hope you're well, playing and making the games that you all love. You're joined by me, your host, Max Perez, and the wonderful, the beautiful Daniel Howard. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Well, a little bit annoyed when I did that, it went out of frame. So I was like,
over there.
Ta-da! So it kind of fucked up there. So
I'm actually just in the corner of your apartment.
Shut up, Dan. Play it cool. You're lucky you get the corner. I mean, there really isn't much space as my bed shows behind me. You know, my OnlyFans is my second hustle overall. You know what I mean? Join Max Perez OnlyFans.
You gotta have that side gig.
The side gig to the side
2020.
We all gotta figure it out. I was gonna say
stacks on stacks.
It's all pennies. That's the thing. Sweet pennies. But no, man. So it's good to have you back. For those who don't know, Dan is our producer and our overall magic man. He does the video editing for us and also was the amazing... Damn, why I'm forgetting it. You were the editor of the book as well. That was the title we agreed on.
That's something I did. Yeah, that is what I did.
There we go. Editor extraordinaire. So Dan is here to help this, make it feel more lively. It's nice to get someone to bounce off as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, man. It's always very fun. Break up these quarantine days, see another person, albeit through a glass screen.
A little glass screen. Well, when was the last time we saw each other? It must have been a year now, or coming up a year. It was December. It was.
It'll be a year in December.
Yeah. It'll probably be longer than a year before we actually see each other face to face again. So
that is sad but true.
I know, fucking hell. But we won't contain people with our sadness. We'll go on to answer the questions. So we have 4 questions for all of you today. Now, the questions are coming from the great community of the Level Design Lobby. If you do want to join and ask these questions for us, you can do so by joining on the Patreon, which is patreon.com/level design lobby. So please come in. Any of the members who are listening, please do add your questions. It's on the Discord called Podcast Questions. Just ask them at any time. We're going to try to do this as a monthly thing between me and Dan, so we always are able to get as much information to all of you.
It's just an excuse to see your pretty face.
I mean, my COVID hair is definitely long now. It's the longest it's ever been. So,
It's looking good, man.
It's Dan made the good crack of offline about 90s boy band. Tell me why.
Channel those Backstreet Boys.
It's a shame I can't actually sing. Because I tell you what, I wouldn't be doing fucking game design. I'd be making millions off my voice. Millions. Yeah, that's it. Well, all right then, Dan. Enough of my rambling and Backstreet Boy loving. Give me some of that sweet questions.
Okay, let's get straight into it. So the first question this month is coming from Oliver Walker.
Okay.
And Oliver's asking, do you have any advice on direction for game devs moving from junior to mid-level members of the team?
Okay. So I think that is a great question because everyone tries to focus on senior or lead or director level. But I think this is a good one because the fact is what people are looking for you is mainly for you to, one is help, younger LDs in the junior position into interns, help them grow. But I think the other element is that people would like you to have more clear design intent. When you're creating your levels, there shouldn't be as less feedback, right? They want you to be clear. Well, what is it that you're designing? Why is it you're designing like that? Be more clear overall in your kind of proof of concepts, your designs, your intentions. The other thing is to be a reliable member of the team because your seniors will be taking on more elements, whether that be helping with the leads to maybe come up with different things like the overall design structure or that of the more planning phases. So for you have to make sure that you're there just delivering good levels. Think of this as your optimal learning time to being the best LD. Another thing that I recommend with it, and I've spoken about this before, is when you're intermediate, it's you kind of deciding what is your path in terms of what is your process. You get to play around with time a bit more. Think of it like when you're a junior, you're learning all these different ways that other LDs work. But for now, it's your chance to take all that information and make it your way. Try to add, or maybe you subtract certain things that you learned because you feel it doesn't work for you. So experiment a bit with your process. As I said, your overall job is to just make better levels. Be clear with them, be precise, and just keep making better levels. Focus on that. I wouldn't recommend focusing too much on trying to help with other elements, especially if you're new into that of intermediate. As you go up into intermediate, do help more, but really focus on making just better levels. So much passion, Dan. I'm hitting the mic out of the way. Get away.
Channeling your inner Italian, just talk with your hands. You gotta gesticulate.
Gotta let them know. But that's what I say is, like, focus on the levels. Really do just focus on that, because when you get to senior and lead, and we've spoken about before, you have less control over your levels. You'll be doing and delegating more work. So again, use that opportunity to just make the best levels that you can. So that's what I recommend. Dan, you got any advice for anyone climbing up the chain?
I mean, that's a tough one with regards to game devs, because I think from a TV and film perspective, your closest thing would be your intern jumping up to production assistant, jumping into whatever sector you wanted to go into, and that is a very different journey, because your interns, a lot of the intern roles on film sets or on productions are not as creatively involved as I think maybe a junior is at a game dev stage. But I definitely think the thing for an intern on a film set, and it could very well be the same for a junior, is the way you work your way up is you get noticed. You put your voice out there, you make sure that you're not going to be stifled. And it can sound a bit brash, but unfortunately that's how it is. If you stick to the sidelines, then you'll never elevate. So
no, I agree.
Where I am.
No, man, that's a good point. Like we said, get noticed. But I think the thing when we're talking about getting noticed is get noticed for the quality of your work. Don't just
that's true. Yeah, you can be noticed for the wrong reasons.
Tell me why. The bad singing like Backstreet Boys, yes. All right then, brother. Do you want to give us the second one?
All right, the second question is coming from Paolo Gambardella, and Paolo is asking, I noticed that you always start from the narrative part of the level before you even sketch or look for references. Do you have any tips to be more creative when generating the narrative?
That's a good question. The reason I think I'm kind of very focused on the narrative is because we kind of facilitate the narrative, right? As level designers, we're trying to make sure that a story is told. When we talk about myself and Dan with when it's say that of games versus more film and TV, is the narrative is always at key front, and it's easier to keep it key front because you're in control of what you're showing, right? But the big thing with games is we have to give the player control. So in one of the last videos that we released, we talked about how the weather in games can change the feeling. And you think about that, because in Last of Us 2, as it gets to day 3, the weather from day 1 was a very pretty kind of sunny, slightly cloudy in day 2, and day 3 a massive storm, because it starts to reflect Ellie's emotion through it. So it's elements like that that we think about, because we need to make sure that it's clear that we're delivering that and communicating with the player, even subconsciously. Now, generally when generating ideas, it's thinking about all the techniques that are available to us. Me and Dan have spoken about a few different ones in terms of like lenses, when we talk about how, angles, cameras, how close-ups work. For us, it's different slightly with level design, because trying to think, when we talk about height, like if we want the players to feel that they're going into hell and struggling, you bring them down, right? Because you're going into that depths of hell, if you will. But if you're wanting them to feel like they're overcoming the odds, then you make them go slightly higher and progress to the level as if they're escaping and gaining the upper ground. So it's those elements, I think, that you need to study a bit more. Study about lighting, study about kind of architecture, study about films, think about all the different views you've got, like all these verbs that poets use to help describe what's going on. Same with authors, these elements, because they'll all come into play to help you. How do you use a mechanic to make the player feel scared, claustrophobic, all these elements. So when I think about it, mate, just do more research on different elements of mediums, because then you can apply them to that of different areas of level design, I think. Do you think I answered the question, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this. Whereas the first question maybe I didn't have a great deal of input with regards to TV and film. This one, I absolutely do. Yeah. Narrative is something that, for TV and film, for the vast majority of TV and film, is always your core concept. And the rule is everything should be serving the narrative.
Yeah.
Now, there is a sort of subsect of games where narrative doesn't necessarily apply, and it is the gameplay or the mechanics that are the start of the show. But I think that, especially in the last 10, 20 years, narrative has become very, very important. And game designers have drawn inspiration from film, from books, from TV, and you are getting that more cinematic language involved in game design. To be more creative, it's just a case of, like you say, understanding what elicits the emotion that you're looking to go for. And that kind of cuts through. Narrative should be trying to elicit some kind of a response or an emotion from, the player or the viewer. And like you were saying about lighting, about angles, about weather, weather with pathetic fallacy, like you were talking about with The Last of Us, it's meant to create an emotional response, which then informs the narrative. So understanding all of that is key there.
Definitely, mate. And I think, one of our favorite games is the Arkham series. And when you think about like how Batman's framed when he's walking, like the camera goes on his shoulder, so he takes up like 2/3 of the screen, because he's always meant to feel like an impressive presence, right? Like he's Batman, for Christ's sake. But when he starts running, the camera comes out, so you see him run, so it makes it feel like he's going faster. And those elements, so things like that, just small plays in it, mate. Like we're all learning from other mediums too. So yeah, no, mate, I think it's bang on.
Okay, so the next question from Vlad Varna complements the previous one very well.
Oh, brilliant.
And it's, where do you go for reference? Is it better to use photos or screenshots from other games, which means you could possibly carry over their style?
It depends what you're looking reference for, right? Now, I would advise, by all means, using other games. There's other games that I've taken reference from and applied to even Cyberpunk. I learned some things and tried to apply it there, but do a twist on it. But it doesn't mean copy at all, because I think use them as good reference, but get real life reference. Understanding where you're building for is important, right? For example, we talk about graveyards a few times. Like an English graveyard is so different to a Mexican graveyard. I don't know if you've ever seen a Russian graveyard or like the cartel graveyards. They look like mini apartments for the Fallen Cartel members. And then Russian ones, like certain parts of Russia, not all of Russia, but they have them where the tombstone is them cut out with their car, like to show that their importance, like their car has value even in the afterlife, which is so different. So it's about understanding where you're going for it. Like, don't just use other games as example, because it might not be based in your area. Like Last of Us is based in Seattle, right? So Seattle's architecture is very different to somewhere in, say, if we were making it in Prague, because it's different history, different constructions, different way that the city has been built. So I recommend that you use that as a starting point, but then try find different things in real life, whether that be, on YouTube, find videos of how systems work, or whether you go and into Google Maps, find elements there. There's tons of ways to research. By all means, games is a good starting point, but try and gather as many as possible. And that's why I say to everyone on the podcast, you need to have minimum 50 images or videos before you should start building, because you've just grabbed a ton of images. It's then filtering through them that you can go, okay, I like this, I don't like that, that works. And then you can start to see how it's constructed in your mind by sieving through all of that. So yeah, hope that one helps.
Yeah. I think we're all influenced
Yes.
by our surroundings, by what we consume from a media perspective. And I think when it comes to reference, you can be there's a distinction between inspiration and plagiarism, you know. So it's not a case of looking at something and then copying it, you know, like for like, but it's like we said before, understanding why you are drawn to a certain aspect of something, what emotional response that elicits, or why that would maybe benefit the narrative or the design or a certain mechanic, and then building your own version of that. You know, throughout the history of media, there are callbacks and references to older films, older pieces of music, older games. That's nothing new. But like you say, like making sure you don't just copy things, and keeping it fresh, keeping your own spin, and always making sure that it serves the game in this instance.
For sure, man. And that's it. Is the more references you gather, the more you're going to know. And that's the other thing. Is like you said, Dan, it's the difference between inspiration and plagiarism. And like the more you get, the more diversity your ideas are going to have. So yeah, man. Let's hit us with the final question, as we're just breezing through this.
I know, nice and easy. Okay, final question. It's coming from Mark Larkin, and Mark asks, do you have any advice on open world level design, focusing on levels offering multiple approaches to completion, such as persuasion, stealth, combat?
This is funny because I think by the time this video is edited, I've actually just done a video on breaking down the differences between open world and linear. So we're going to put a link to that, but like solves the question. But I think there's a lot of differences with it, and I'm trying to do the best one because I don't want to just skip over it because there's so much detail to it. But with open world, one of the biggest differences, and I don't think this is actually spoken about, is your budget. Your budget is nowhere near as much as it is for linear levels, because 9 times out of 10, the studio knows that more players are going to be playing for the story and for those bigger missions. So they invest more in that to leave the wow factor. So open world, you've kind of got to understand what's available to you and make the most out of what's there, because you can't request as many, say, assets as, say, a linear mission. So you've got to keep that in mind. The other thing is, you don't know where the player is going to be coming from on that map. So that's why we talk about doing 360 design. So the player can come at any angle and approach in different areas for that. So it's about understanding where the player can approach from. From linear, you are in control of what they see and when they see it, versus open world. So with open world, with 360 design, you have to think about, how do you tell the story? How do you give the objective from any one of those angles? Because that way you need to communicate fast, because again, you're not going to have cutscenes. You're very rarely going to have audio, like audio files to back it up. So you need to make sure you convey it quicker, and just, again, from any angle. The other thing is your use of mechanics. You're probably not going to get custom mechanics. So understanding how to best mix up your mechanics. Think creatively. Okay, well, what can I do with a carry mechanic? Can I carry a bomb and plant it? Can I move it out and disarm it? Can I carry a civilian to save them? These elements, like, think about how you can reuse the mechanics in unique and different ways for it. I think with these kind of elements, you need to firstly understand your game, understand where it is in the world, what mechanics are available to you, how do you make it interesting? Because a lot of open world, any open world game, this is by no means a dig, as I mentioned earlier, it's budget. A lot of them take place in similar areas like warehouses, alleyways, all things like that. So how do you make yours feel different? I always talk about, I don't always, because Dan would get sick of me, but I mentioned the element of push the crazy. How do you make your alleyway different? What is different about it? What can you do to make it feel like, whoa, what's happened here? Would that be extra narrative? Can it be the building around it's crumbled? There's a lot of scaffolding for the player to use to get height advantage. These things that you need to think about as well. So don't be afraid to push it. And like I said, I know you're restricted but budgets, but sometimes restricting is sometimes the key to creativity. By understanding our restrictions, we know how to push areas. So yes, I'm sorry to kind of give like not a half-assed answer, but more of a simple answer, because like I said, by the time this video comes out, there will be a video breaking this down in detail already out before that. So we'll put that in the show notes for you to go check out for more answers there. But yeah, I guess Dan as a player, because obviously it's slightly different with media. Do you have any thoughts?
Very much so. Yeah, so obviously from a production side of things, for me, it's not something that really applies in TV and film. But from a player perspective, I love being given a choice. A game series that does this very well is the Dishonored series.
Oh yeah.
So many different ways to play throughout those games. Stealth and combat, just looking at the two that Mark referenced, that's kind of the big sort of polarizing ideologies of the Dishonored series. The fact that you can go through every level without killing anyone, or you can go through every level killing everyone, or you can do completely non-lethal, or you can do never been seen, and that scope, that choice, it must have been very, very difficult from a design perspective. And you can see that every part of that level, every vent, every door, every enemy patrol placement, it's all been very carefully crafted so that every play style is achievable, albeit difficult in its own right. The only place this kind of factors in to me from an actual design perspective is I DM a 5e Dungeons and Dragons game, and that's kind of a big part of tabletop role-playing games, or at least for me anyway, is not railroading your players and always giving your players option. Now obviously a big thing that you hit on with regards to open world design in video games is budget. That's the beauty of tabletop RPGs, is budget. Yeah, that doesn't exist, so if you can think it, you can do it. But I've always been very surprised as a DM when my players have been able to completely think around a situation, or throw a solution that, because I will try and anticipate every eventuality, in order to prep for what happens next. But even then, the players will occasionally throw something at you you couldn't figure it out yourself. Well, that's always quite fun.
I think that's a good reason why people should play D&D, because the fact, like you said, seeing how different people think blows your mind, right? Like, you're like, what? How did you even think about that?
Yeah, and it's especially from a design and a narrative point of view, I found that it's a very good creative outlet, but like you say, it opens you up to a different way of thinking, and it'll, especially for a game design perspective, it'll make you think about those kinds of mechanics and those kinds of possibilities in a very different way.
Agreed. I think it's one that we would definitely recommend for other people to try. If you haven't tried it, please do try it, or watch some of the people on Critical Role and Dimensions 20. They're two shows that we like, and just to see again how they come up with solutions is fascinating. So yeah, a bit of D&D tangent, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
We should get a sponsorship one day. Just be like, hey, D&D.
Hey, Wizards, give me that D&D dollar.
Please do it so I can turn off my OnlyFans. But yeah, I think that's all of them right there, Dan.
Yes, that's it. We have exhausted our questions.
Fantastic. So we just want to say again, if you do want to ask questions, please do join our Patreon, because that's where you can ask questions. For anyone who is part of the Patreon, please just ask away. Like, even if I don't ask, or we're doing a Q&A, come up with questions. If you have any, just write them down. We will come down to this. Me and Dan are going to turn this into a regular thing once a month. and make sure that we answer as many questions as we can, everyone. So we think it's great to do it. We like the fact that you're all excited by it, and yeah, much more. Any final words, Dan?
I think that's kind of summed it up perfectly. I'm looking forward to doing this on a very regular basis. It's always nice to see what kind of gets thrown out, and it's nice to give me a chance to speak about maybe a different side to what you'd be speaking about. Obviously, coming from a different industry background. But yeah, thanks for having us on. It's always fun.
And if people want to reach out to you, Dan, how can they do so?
I am on Twitter at Dowd24, Instagram, same handle at Dowd24. Facebook, same handle at Dowd24.
Just
hit me up. That's it. I've got all those handles.
For me, if you want to contact me, you can do so, which is at Max Pears. If you want to email into the show, please do so at leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. All of that will be in the link down below. So thank you all very much, and we'll catch you all next time.